I caught a glimpse of heaven once. They stole it from me.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most brutal, violent, and underrated games from the PlayStation 2 era, The Punisher. Now, when we talk about underrated, we're talking about a game that no one talks about, but if you missed it, you missed out on one of the best action games ever made. But here's the thing, this game is not just violent, it's a masterpiece that almost got the adult game rating. So buckle up, because this is going to be a wild ride.
Last bullet. My whole family died in a mob hit. I should have died too. I took enough bullets, but I lived. I finally figured out why.
Let's start with the story. Based on the iconic Marvel Comics character, The Punisher lets players step into the boots of Frank Castle, a former Marine turned vigilante. After the tragic loss of his wife and children to a mob hit, Castle goes on a relentless mission to take down every criminal, gang, and villain that crosses his path. The game starts with a major raid at a mob hideout, and from there, the story takes players on a brutal journey through New York City, battling the likes of the Russian mob, corrupt cops, and even a villain from the Punisher's comic book world like Jigsaw. What makes the story so compelling? It's gritty, dark, and filled with twists that keep you on the edge of your seat. And what really sets it apart from other action games at the time is the way it blends the Punisher's tragic backstory with his need for vengeance. It's a story of loss, revenge, and unrelenting punishment. What makes the story so compelling? It's gritty, dark, and filled with twists that keep you on the edge of your seat. And what really sets it apart from other action games at the time is the way it blends the Punisher's tragic backstory with his need for vengeance. It's a story of loss, revenge, and unrelenting punishment.
Please!
But here's where the Punisher gets really interesting, the interrogation scenes. If you've heard anything about this game, you know it's notorious for these brutal moments. The game allows you to interrogate enemies in several creative ways. We're talking about using a guy's head as a battering ram against a wall, drowning someone in a toilet, or using a blowtorch to convince them to talk. It's not just about beating people up. It's about making them pay for their sins. Now, these scenes are incredibly violent, but they serve a purpose. They're not just shock value for the sake of shock value. The interrogations tie directly into Frank Castle's mentality. This is a man who has been broken by loss, who believes that violence is the only way to extract justice. It's an uncomfortable experience, but it makes you understand his mentality as a vigilante. He's a man who's willing to go to any lengths for vengeance. And this is where the Punisher gets really controversial. The game was criticized for its over-the-top violence, and it almost received the dreaded adults-only AO rating, something no major game company wants. This was because the game was extremely violent, especially in its interrogation scenes, but also throughout the whole experience. You're not just shooting enemies, you're brutally executing them in a variety of ways. Whether you're throwing a guy into a wood chipper or using a grenade to finish someone off, every fight feels like you're going all in on punishment. This level of violence was a big part of why the game was nearly banned in some regions, but it also made it stand out as a true representation of the Punisher character. I mean, we're talking about a guy whose entire identity is based around vengeance and punishment. So, this isn't just mindless violence, this is Frank Castle doing what he does best. He doesn't just kill his enemies, he makes them suffer. Of course, the violence wouldn't hit as hard if the gameplay wasn't solid. Luckily, The Punisher delivers a mix of classic third-person shooter mechanics with a brutal combat system that allows you to do everything from mowing down enemies with machine guns to getting up close and personal with melee kills. It's satisfying, it's visceral, and it makes every encounter feel intense. Plus, the ability to interrogate enemies adds a strategic layer to the game. It's not just about shooting and running, it's about choosing your tactics and finding ways to get the information you need to move the story forward. This game was way ahead of its time in that regard. The combination of action, narrative, and violence created a fully immersive experience that, honestly, is still better than some of the modern games that try to replicate that style. So, why is it that The Punisher is still so underrated? It came out at a time when other big-name action games like Grand Theft Auto, San Andreas, and Max Payne 2 were dominating the market, and unfortunately, The Punisher didn't get the love it deserved. Sure, it had the violence, but it also had a unique story, a truly compelling character in Frank Castle, and gameplay that felt fresh for the time. And yet, it got lost in the shuffle. What makes it even more criminal is that a game this good almost never saw the light of day due to its mature content. And now, years later, people still haven't gone back to it. The brutal storytelling, the raw action, and the memorable characters are all there. The Punisher deserves more recognition. So, if you've never played The Punisher on the PS2, it's time to change that. It's one of the most underrated games of its generation, with a gritty narrative, compelling gameplay, and some of the most violent and shocking moments ever seen in a game. Frank Castle's quest for vengeance is a story worth experiencing, and the brutality of the game is not just for shock value, it's integral to the character. The Punisher is more than just a violent revenge story. It's a statement on loss, justice, and the cost of vengeance. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments if you think The Punisher deserves a modern remake or if you think it's best left as a hidden gem. I'll see you in the next video.